More bad news for Netflix, more good news for their competitors. Have the losses stopped for Netflix, or is this going to keep on going? Oof, Netflix has been getting hit. We've talked a lot about Netflix on the show. We've been a huge skeptic of Netflix on the show for years. Netflix continues its slide, losing subscribers, while Disney Plus is gaining 8 million new subscribers. Disney added 7.9 million new subscribers to Disney Plus, bringing it to about a little more than 87 million people worldwide. It doesn't include, they've got this special deal, I think in India, Disney Plus Hotstar, which has another 50 million people. And so I think it's much more heavily discounted users. So it's 87 million more legitimate, strongly paying users. They gained 7 more million subscribers, not in the past quarter, but over the past year, now over 44 million subscribers in North America. Then you throw in Hulu and ESPN Plus, and they're over 200 million. And, meanwhile, Netflix loses 200,000 subscribers, loses net loss of subscribers. That can't happen if you are a platform monopoly. Can't happen. And we're going to talk about Twitter in a second here, which also has a subscriber and a user problem. But what you see are these false monopolies. Yeah, both Netflix and Twitter are false monopolies, both in the content world, kind of false idols. You look at their stock 6 months ago in November was $650. Netflix, $650. It's now $175. We've been calling it for years. I wish I'd taken out some more longer term puts on this thing, but calling it for years. Netflix is not a platform. They are a linear business, really just a movie theater which had a better digital mousetrap. And we said it was not sustainable, wasn't defensible for years. Been proven correct. Big time on this one. And I think just a few months ago when we were talking about Netflix before their Q1 earnings, we were saying it's going to go down even more. People didn't believe us then. The bleeding, I said the bleeding has not stopped for Netflix. Has the bleeding stopped now? $77 billion market cap. They're projecting more subscriber loss. There's 2 gotchas on Netflix and why I think Netflix has more downward pressure on it than upward, which means I think it's going to continue to go down. 2 gotchas on Netflix. One is they have not invested in business model innovation these past number of years where they had such a big lead on the rest of the movie studios, right? What you have to understand with these movie studios is they make movies, but they're part of a broader system. They are part of a broader conglomerate. These movie studios have multiple ways to monetize these media assets. Disney is, literally the perfect example. This is Walt Disney. This is now 75 years ago, 1957. His drawing of their business model. And what do you recognize in this web? Movies and content is actually just one part of the whole system, right? This is called business model innovation, right? They've got the content intertwined here at the center of it, creative talent of studio theatrical films. Boom, right at the center of the web. And then they've got distribution, and then they've got TV and publications and magazine, and then they've got the parks, merchandising and licensing, music, right? Comics, all these different things with content at the center. Where is Netflix's business model innovation web? And the answer is that they don't have one. They haven't been investing in business model innovation. And that really is to the detriment of their leadership, but Reed Hastings, right? Reed Hastings was at the helm of this thing for too long. Did he crash and burn the thing like an Adam Newman? No, it wasn't as hot air as a WeWork, but there was a lot of hot air in this thing, and he shouldn't have been sitting too pretty. We've been talking about it for years, how they needed to advance their business model from a platform and actually become a platform business. How could they embrace user-generated content? I think that still is an area that they should look at moving into. But the point is, you can't just do subscription streaming. So that's point number one. Your competitors have a diversified conglomerate-like business model, which means they can continue to sink money into digital subscription streaming products while they have multiple ways to monetize that. And you only have one way to monetize that. And that's why everyone's putting pressure on Netflix to do ads. But ads is not the solution. You need true business model innovation, and they have just not done it. And I think the guy he promoted, this guy Ted, who is really a content guy first and foremost, is that the right person to really forge completely new business models? I don't know. Probably not. Okay, so that's point number one. Point number two is what you really need to look at for Netflix is not their operating income or net income numbers. You can see here, Q1, it says 1.6 billion net income, operating income 1.97 billion. You're like, wow, look, Netflix is making billions of dollars. Not true. What you really need to look at is their free cash flow, which they don't have. So they pretty much broke even in Q1 at $20 million. But you look at the prior quarters, operating income, $630 million, net change in cash, negative $1.5 billion. Oh, okay, the quarter before that, net change in cash, negative $250 million, operating income $1.75 billion. The quarter before that, operating income $1.85 billion, net change in cash, negative $600 million. Why do you need to look at really free cash flow for Netflix as opposed to income? It's actually, it's funny, lots of WeWork parallels. They've kind of done their own version of community adjusted EBITDA, without calling it community adjusted EBITDA. Netflix's version of operating income is basically a complete hedge on how they decide to depreciate their spending on content. They have some kind of cockamamie explanation. We covered it for years ago, where their CFO at the time was saying, there's a matrix of how we determine should something be depreciated over 3 years, 4 years, or maybe 5 years. And it kind of depends on what kind of content it is. And Basically, there is no strict rule for how they decide to depreciate content, which means it's a moving target, and they don't disclose how they codify their catalog. And so you honestly can't look at the number because they spend so much money on creating content. That's really the main lever to decide, did we make 1.85 billion in income this quarter? Or, 600 million. What you really need to look at is, can they spin off cash? And the answer is no, they cannot spin off cash. The only time they actually had positive free cash flow was literally during the height of COVID, when they had to shut down all the production crews, right? Like you had shelter in place and you could not go and create a movie. And then boom, they created a bunch of free cash, but they weren't creating new content. Kind of a problem for a digital content streaming company. So for those two reasons, the company is actually not profitable. I would argue they've got community adjusted EBITDA tendencies. And when you really look at free cash flow, which is my true measure for if they're profitable, they're not profitable, A. And B, they're being squeezed by competitors who are only gaining more and more ground, who can continue to justify huge investments in digital streaming because they actually have a diversified business model. Both of those things put together spells not a bright future for Netflix, even at a $77 billion market cap, even at coming down a high of $690 just 6 months ago, stock price down to $175. I do think there's more room to go. And as they have said, they have more subscriber losses to go, right? So yeah, they're the leader. They're losing subs. The other better fortified, more sustainable business competitors are gaining subs. It's just not a good recipe for Netflix investors. So I would steer clear of that. More information about Netflix. We literally have like a whole catalog of past videos on Netflix. Go look at our videos from like a couple years ago. Those actually would be the more interesting ones to watch, when Netflix was everyone's darling child and we were not on the Netflix bandwagon. Go look at those videos. I think you'll get a kick out of those.